Video game collecting. It's a hobby, not a problem. Collecting is one of gaming's most popular pastimes, besides getting cancelled, of course. But with the collecting of all these arthritis-causing beauties, comes the want to play them. But look at all these different games. Almost all of them require a different console to play, excluding things like the Wii and Wii U with backwards compatibility. And you know the feeling of... that. No one wants to lead an expedition to the darkest depths behind the TV to switch a few AV cables, and we're not all rich enough to have that cool, fancy technology. So what do? How will our poor little gamer hands manage? Enter the game compilation. Surely we've all owned one of these at some point. One game disc or cartridge boasting multiple games rolled into one beefy burrito. I'm hungry, I didn't eat lunch, okay? I've owned many game collections in the past that I now look back on in a nostalgic light, albeit not always for good reasons. Sometimes these overstuffed bundles nail it, while other times they're bare bones and leave much to be desired. But you're not here to listen to me talk about all that. You're here to look at this thing. Sonic the Hedgehog is no stranger to collections, having almost too many to list. Of all the websites I've checked, none of them actually list them all. And make no mistake, I don't intend to list all of them either. I already take 5 years to upload, I don't need more delay. But with the release of the arguably botched Sonic Origins, I decided I wanted to share my opinion on the ultimate Sonic collection that I think you should try and get a hold of. I'm not one of the people that hopped on the bandwagon of bash Sonic Origins as soon as it came out because, I'll be honest, those glitches and whatnot were blown way out of proportion. Even so, I consider it to be an okay collection at best. I love the animations, anyone with a brain would, but it can't save what really amounts to a decent attempt at best. So, what do I consider to be above decent?
Well, functional is certainly required.
One, or rather two titles people always bring up are the Sonic Mega Collections. Sonic Mega Collection and Sonic Mega Collection Plus. These two games have played many a part in the childhoods of the early 2000s.
I am not one of those childhoods.
I've seen quite a bit about them, and I'd seen them in stores plenty, but I just never felt drawn to them. However, I did try them out. And they are alright. Yep, not perfect, not great, just alright.
Now, I may be an idiot, but there is one thing I am not, sir, and that, sir, is an idiot.
Now, if you wanted to introduce somebody to the game starting with the classics, this is a solid option. The bonus content letting you do things like watch the Sonic CD opening to your heart's content is every child's dream. The unlockables are great for sure, but it's nothing that I was longing for. Like, cool, I get to unlock the Blue Sphere game. Thanks, do I get to cut my grandma's toenails next? For me, these just seemed too generic. I wasn't pulled in by them. To another average Sonic fan, it might have sounded as though I just swore allegiance to Iblis himself. I didn't mean that those collections are below average or anything. I just didn't feel like they were all too special. Which is about to make my next statement sound stupid. The Nintendo DS was no stranger to Sonic games. Some good, some bad, some
But on this humble platform, there was but another compilation available. Sonic Classic Collection.
Man, it's weird to look back at the art used around this era. There was no modern or classic Sonic. So art like this and art like this were used interchangeably. No splitting timelines, just Sonic.
A simpler time.
And it's not just the box art that gets me about this collection. This game has a gallery. My statements about the Mega Collections are starting to sound really stupid.
I'm a simple man. I don't ask for much.
And as a kid, using this art as a reference was fun. I loved all the different styles and poses used, and flipping through each piece gave me a nice feeling. I can't really think of any other nice things to say about these collectibles, and they can't even really count as collectibles since they're already unlocked the second you boot up the game. Leave me alone, I like this one, okay? Game-wise, it's not the most special thing ever. Fuzzy visuals, occasional glitchy and spotty sound. But it gets major bonus points for being the final official release of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, at least before Origins came out. Not long after this game was released, all the scary lawsuit stuff happened. So this DS collection, like it or not, intended or not, was the final official thing we got. Not that anyone really cared, seeing as how Sonic 3 Air exists. You can also put in cheat codes to access level select for all 4 games, and even use debug mode. This can also be done on the Mega Collections. I'm not really helping my case. I like this one more, okay? Deal with it. There's also Sonic Gems Collection. Yep, it sure is. While the other collections focused more on mainline classics, Gems got a bit more obscure. Some of the games are the same, like Sonic 2 and Spinball, but then we have Sonic Drift 2, Triple Trouble, and Tails' 2 spin-off games. Seeing as how these are Game Gear games and thus mostly unplayed, especially for 2005, the value in this collection is pretty respectable. It didn't perform as well as the others, but when you choose to flaunt Spinball and Sonic Drift 2 being in the same game, that should have been expected.
Is what I would say if Sonic Mega Collection Plus hadn't done the same thing. Stop haunting my dreams!
I, again, have little experience with this collection. The games included, along with me just not being a huge fan of the box art, pushed me away a bit. The art still looks nice, it's just not my style, you know?
What else do we got here?
Oh, there's also Sonic Classics. It exists. I actually forgot about this one until I found it looking up different collections. I almost bought it at one point, but I decided to buy Mario 3 and Vector Man instead. As far as I can tell, this is the first game collection Sonic ever had, and it shows. It's extremely bare bones. It would have been cool if they had done the same thing Mario All-Stars did, and revamped visuals and stuff, but clearly the thoughts were more on money than legacy. It's a nice thing to have for sure, my collector side is peeved I didn't grab it, but it's super cheap, so I'm not worried about it. A copy will always be out there for me, and at a low price to boot. Can't complain about that. It's not really noteworthy though. Now there are 2 actual game collections left to mention. I'm not mentioning the Sonic & Knuckles PC collection, cause it's not really a collection. I think it's cool and all, and for the time I think the wallpaper and music options for the European and North American versions are great, but as it's only the full game included on this thing, I wouldn't call it a game collection, more like a game collectible. So, this next collection is considered pretty rare and valuable by most collector standards.
I own Sonic Jam! It's a pretty rare game, but I don't want to be known as the guy who owns Sonic Jam when I'm dead.
Sonic Jam, released on the Sega Saturn in 1997. I'll be blunt, the gameplay and stuff is mostly unchanged. I will say that instead of just emulating Genesis games, they actually rewrote code for the Saturn, making it run slightly better, but for the most part exactly the same. Aside from separating normal and easy modes, giving Sonic a spin dash in Sonic 1, and doing some overall quality of life improvements, the games remain mostly the same. But because of the transition, some glitches popped up, such as the waterfall in Green Hill Zone no longer making noise. What'd you think was gonna happen after running under a waterfall repeatedly? But that's not why we like this collection. No. We want to see this. Welcome to Sonic World, the first real 3D Sonic experience. Technically, you could say that Sonic's first controllable 3D debut is in Nights into Dreams, releasing over a year earlier in 1996. But Sonic Jam is where he truly shines. Apparently, Sonic World was a basis for the adventure games, and honestly, I can see it. There's not nearly as much momentum or anything, so all you momentum fanatics need to leave, but this small thing that ultimately amounts to a tech demo is extremely charming, and low poly Sonic must make a comeback. Forget classic Sonic. For Forces 2, I want to see low poly. Quick nostalgia note, I didn't realize it at the time, but the music used in Sonic World was recycled for the menu in Sonic Classic Collection. It was weird hearing it through a Saturn filter instead of the nasally DS sound we get now. You know, the... Overall, Sonic Jam is very solid, and Sonic World really nails the simple fun of just running around in an open space. If I was a 90s kid, I for sure would have begged for a Saturn just to play this game. I mean, that's the reason that this game sold in the first place, honestly. And it was only a few years later that Sonic World's Walk turned into Sonic Adventure's Run. As a game collection, it did a good job fixing and reproducing past titles. And as a bonus, it had a lot of extra fun. But if there's still one title, what could it be? How could anything top the first true 3D Sonic experience? Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection. Relive the glory days of your Sega Genesis. Booting the game, you can tell right away. This is way more than a Sonic collection. Over 40 Sega Genesis titles are on this thing, many of which had never been re-released on console before. And unless I'm mistaken, this is the first time that all these games have been re-released in HD, with both options of original screen size and HD screen size. I could be wrong, but I couldn't find anything saying otherwise, so feel free to point that out. Also feel free to point out the fact that I'm using Xbox footage while holding a PS3 game. No, I did not steal footage. Somehow, I didn't realize that the PS3 had a dumb security thing that you need an HDMI splitter to bypass. However, I gave away my old splitter, but I had a game to record, so obviously there was an easy answer. I bought the same game again. It's not the first time, okay? I don't have a problem, you have a problem. I love Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection. You can feel the passion and love poured into every one of the smallest corners of this game. The Genesis aesthetic on everything, all the unlockable behind the scenes videos, interviews, secret games to play, even the menu music goes hard. You can tell the small team that made this loves the Genesis and wanted to do each and every game justice. Except for the back of the box, where they label Sonic 3 as Sonic 2. How did you do that? And the customizable gameplay and visual options are a nice touch. I think in this collection, games look better than the original size, but when I was younger, I would always stretch them into widescreen. I don't know if I'm just a Sonic boomer now, but things change, I guess. I just feel like the widescreen mode made it look a bit fuzzy. But if you want to fix that problem, there's always an option to enable smoothing. And the controls feel tight. In past collections and ports of old Sonic and even other Genesis games, I feel like the controls just aren't as honed in as the original games. The Genesis D-pad feels big, but reliable for controlling games. However, most modern consoles just have never been able to recreate this feeling, probably because the D-pads are half the size, which applies to all except for this title. It's even nicer when you use the Xbox 360 D-pad, as it feels very similar to the OG Genesis one. Now, all of these nice feelings might just sound like nostalgia, and in all honesty, a lot of it probably is. But with a humongous variety of games and bonuses here, how could you not recommend this as a starting point for somebody wanting to hop into the Sega library? Some of you might be thinking, well, if I included this collection, why not include all the Sega collections? That's a very fair point, but to humor that, why don't we also take a quick look at this, Sega Genesis Classics. Looking at this for a split second, it just seems like the next-gen version of the UGC. However, when someone like me looks at this, I see a lack of inspiration, heart, and Sega wanting to make that sweet wampum. Just for a second, compare the boxes. This'll make sense, I promise. On one hand, we have what is apparently Greg Martin's final piece of Sonic game box art, looking as floppy and attitude-filled as ever. Surrounding him is the legacy that he transcended. It feels proud of what it is. And what does this other one have? A picture I can make in Photoshop in under 5 minutes. This just looks like any other modern game collection. It doesn't stand out in the slightest.
Includes over 50 retro Sega favorites!
Like, that just sounds pandering to a wider audience. The fact that these games are old and supposedly cool shouldn't be the selling point. The selling point should be these games. I sound like I'm going insane. What I mean is, Ultimate Genesis Collection wasn't trying to flaunt these games as old, therefore cool. It was saying, hey, here are the old classics you've never heard of, but now in HD with a lot of charming extras. But when I look at Genesis Classics, all I hear is, hey, these games are old, and you know old is the cool new thing right now, so you should buy me. If I'm honest, the game is completely fine. The main menu feels a little cheap, but it's a cute little setup mimicking a 90s kid's room. The fake boxes bug the crap out of me, like you couldn't look up the actual boxes, and no menu music slaps even close to as hard. But as a whole, it's a solid collection. There are cool options, filters, borders, but no unlockables this time. Again, another reason I feel it's a bit lazy. But the nail in the coffin? They didn't even bother to add Echo the Dolphin. Overall, it's a fine collection, but if I'm to recommend any Sonic collection, or heck, any Sega collection, Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection is a must-buy. All the mainline classic Sonic games, minus CD, and a great haul along with them. It's because of this gem of a game that I know half of the Genesis library even exists. I have so many memories of me and my siblings screwing each other over in Bonanza Bros, doing the stupidest moves in Streets of Rage, trying to beat the stupid first level of Sonic Spinball, Lord have mercy on that game's soul. So many people have great nostalgia for this game, and I'm one of those people. If you want a cool game collection to own and make memories with, I'd recommend this one. I'm sure there are better ones, and if you're only in it for Sonic, well, Origins is gonna get some DLC soon, or depending on when this video comes out, it might have already gotten it. Collecting has always been something that I've loved doing. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it's related to something that I like, then I kinda wanna try and get as many as I can. Games are a good outlet for that. But sometimes slowing down and using a game compilation to satiate that thirst is nice. And Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection is a great option. Unless you have good taste. What? If you can't beat 'em, join 'em.